This is a conversation with Dan Matha, football player, WWE wrestler, voiceover artist, podcaster, and fellow generalist. We talk about his story and the values of broadening one's experiences in life. This podcast is sponsored by me. Go to joshterryplays.com to see what I'm up to. First of all, thanks for coming on, and second of all, just where do you hail from? How did the journey of Dan start? Give the audience a little background about who and what you are.
Okay. My name's Daniel Matha. I'm originally from Erie, Pennsylvania, and I grew up there. And from there, I was a football player, and that was kind of where I found my success early on in life, was in athletics, particularly football. I excelled at a very young age there. So that was like something that kind of drew me into the world of like discipline and like self-progression and like bettering oneself through like wielding, crafting one's physical tool being your body, right? And then later on that ripples into other aspects, the mental, spiritual. But when you're a teenager, you don't think about that shit. So it's just like, I'm gonna get good at football. And I grew up in the lower socioeconomic bracket. One of the things I like to, it's a real catchy phrase. I'm a kid who grew up in a trailer park across the street from the projects. So that for me, football was my ticket out. That was my way out of my environment. So to me, it was just like tunnel vision. And then it just so happened to be that I love football. I think it was like the 96 Super Bowl I saw, or 95 or 96, I saw the San Francisco 49ers destroy the San Diego Chargers. And I just was like, this game's for me, So that really drew me in. And, I found success with that, and that kept my rebellious ass out of trouble for the most part, or any serious trouble. And then I got to, started getting looked at a lot of Division I schools, and I had a lot of options. I ended up deciding to go to the University of Pittsburgh. And that was a crazy journey in itself, because I came into this highly touted recruit, and I was supposed to make big waves and do big things, and life had something else to say about that. I had some injuries, kind of got into some trouble, and I didn't have the greatest start. And then, I just ended up not playing, right? For various reasons, whatever. I didn't end up playing. So I had to make a decision. Am I going to continue playing football? I'm going to move on. And, at that point I hit like this real low spot in my life where I thought I was just going to be done. I was getting ready. I put all my shit on Craigslist, and I was going to buy a motorcycle and drive out to San Diego and start surfing and shit. And from there, I made this decision. I was like, listen, at a young age, I was going to be a pro football player. I was going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, greatest football player of all time. But at that point I was like, I put all this work in. I love this game. Am I really going to walk away from this? School didn't go great. The University of Pittsburgh didn't go great. At least at that time, my perspective was this didn't go great. I'm unhappy. I'm kind of down on this situation, but do I just want to walk? Like when I'm 50, when I'm 60, am I going to be okay with this decision? So then I kind of recalibrated everything, and I was like, okay, we're not even thinking about the NFL. We're not even thinking about pro football. I want to be able to say that I played on a college football team, like actually played, started, contributed to wins, helping a group of men towards a common goal. So I made the decision to transfer schools. And so I transferred. I decided to transfer to a D2 school so I wouldn't lose eligibility. Ended up going to Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And from there, that everything kind of changed. One of the greatest people in my life kind of entered at that point. So, a mentor to this day, my offensive line coach, Mike Campolo. He came, he actually was one of the first people to recruit me once my release went on the waiver wire. And him and I literally, the first person I met out of the whole second recruiting process. And I literally knew that instant. I was like, this is a guy that I need to be around. This is the place I need to go. And going there, I thought I knew so much about football. I went there and learned exponentially more, and really honed in my craft and really became the best player I could be by going there. And I don't know if I could have done that if I would have stayed at Pitt or would have transferred to another Division I school. So, and then, you know, I got to play with I met some people at IUP that are still in my life today. And so that really molded me, you know, at a young age to have to make this crazy decision to go like, oh, I'm going to give up Division I status, right? Because as a football player, especially collegiate, that's a big deal. You got to give that up. You know, at 20 years old, I was like, all right, I'm going to give this up. I'm going to kind of downgrade and just to play and not worry about what's to come next. And in that process, you know, I became a collegiate All-American, you know, dominated everybody that I played against. And then the team was super successful my senior year, which was extremely gratifying. So then from there, you know, a lot of pro scouts, they were coming to my practices, they were coming to games, they were watching me. So that ended up when I lost focus, or not so much lost focus, but when I stopped thinking about that, eventually the process brought it back to me. So then from there, you know, I finish up school. I have this opportunity to go in the draft or become a priority free agent. The draft came. There was a couple calls in the 5th round, didn't get picked up. After that, I was like, okay, I'm going to for sure be a priority free agent. There's been a ton of interest. Day 1 of free agency goes by, nothing. Day 2 goes by, nothing. So I'm like, damn. At this point, it's just looking like, because if you don't get picked up in those first 2 days, you're probably not getting picked up. So I'm like, yo, Greg, that's my agent. I'm like, yo, Greg, what's going on here? And then, you know, he gave me some slick line. I was young at the age. I didn't really realize the agent process, but this guy, I needed to be on him a lot more than I did. That's a different story for another time. But later down the line, I ended up firing his ass. But anyways, so I was just like, yo, Greg, what's going on, man? Like, this ain't rolling the way we thought. I was told it was going to happen or anticipated it was going to happen. So I'm just like sitting at home kind of like, man, I think it's over. And then like a week later, I got a call from Greg on a Thursday or Wednesday afternoon. And he goes, yo, dude, Cincinnati Bengals called and they need another player for OTAs. And they were actually looking for a different guy that I'm representing, but they didn't know that he was picked up by the Seahawks. And I was like, Greg was like, well, that guy is already taken, but I actually got this other guy who's like probably, you know, the best guy that I'm representing that's just sitting here. And he was like, you guys interested? And they were like, yeah. So he called me, told me, he was like, yo, they need you to be there by like Friday morning. And this was like Wednesday. And I was like, yeah, no problem, bro. So packed up my shit, threw to my Cadillac at the time. I was driving this sweet 96 Cadillac Eldorado, real low miles, bro. It was like a boat, just driving that thing. Love that car. So I just whipped that thing over to Cincinnati, about a 5-hour drive. Got there right away, and then just started putting in work. They had drafted like 2 other tackles, one guy in the 4th round, another guy in the 6th round. So like I was kind of like a camp body, but I was like, to me, I was like, yo, my foot's in the door. I don't give a shit. So first one in there, got the playbook right away, start reading that thing. Do. I was like, oh, I already know this playbook. I just had to figure out the terminology. And I was like, this is my time to shine. The guy they drafted in the 1st round was like a D end too. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be going against this dude. I'm going to make this guy mine. You know what I mean? He's going to be carrying my pocket around the yard. You know what I mean? So I did my thing at OTAs and really started impressing a lot of people. Marvin Lewis was the coach at the time, impressed him. Paul Alexander, the offensive line coach there, really impressed him. And I learned a lot from that dude. I loved my time with that guy. So I started moving my way up that depth chart. Looked like I was about to get brought in, picked up by them. And then I failed my physical. When I was a freshman in college, I had to have both my labrums repaired. And my right one didn't fully heal because they kind of rushed me back and it popped again. And I was like, yo, I'm not getting surgery again. Screw that. So in that process, you know, they were just like, in the NFL, it's a business. The only time they got to pay you is when you're injured, and you could be this much better than these guys, but because you have this much more of a risk of being injured and them having to pay you, it don't matter. So I ended up not making the squad because of that. And then I was just like, all right, well, I still want to play. So I went up to Canada. I got signed by the Montreal Alouettes. And I was like, yo, I'll play up in Canada. I'll keep game film. I'll be current. I'll hone my skills. I'll come back next year. Bada bing, bada boom. So go up to Canada. They signed me for like 6 months. I was up there signed for like 6 months. First day camp is just like physical stuff like that. Second day, we start getting into like helmets and stuff. Second day, I had it right before we reported that night before. I'm at camp, I'm sleeping, I'm getting ready for this early morning. I have this dream that I leave Montreal to become a wrestler. It was just like wild. I'm like, yo, I just had this dream to leave Montreal to become a wrestler. I'm like, what's going on? I got camp. So like alarm goes off. It's like 6 a.m. I'm like, yo, let's go. So I have like 7 missed calls and a bunch of text messages from the general manager. And I was like, what? Why is he blowing me up? Now, I thought he was blowing me up because there was a player strike that was looming on the horizon. And if that happened, all the Americans would have to get sent home because you're only allowed to have so many Americans on a team. So I'm like, okay, maybe the player strike took place. So I go into the office. I'm like, yo, I'm like, Mark, what's up? He was like, yo, man, we got to let you go. And I'm like, huh? And he was like, yo, we got to let you go. And he was like, one of the receivers had got hurt. And I think it was Marty Gilliard. I don't know any football fans remember Marty Gilliard, but he was an American player. Now in Canada, you're only allowed to have so many American players, and they usually use it on skilled players, wide receivers, DBs, quarterbacks. Don't use them on linemen. But because I'm an offensive tackle and they're a pass-happy league, protecting the quarterback's priority. So they made an exception. I was like one of the American players that they brought in, but because one of the stars got hurt and they weren't going to release him from the team, it was just a 6-week injury. They were like, yo, you got a new guy, you got to go. So I'm like, man. So I'm sitting in the Montreal airport sulking, kind of salty as hell, drinking some airport beers. And my agent's blowing me up because there's a couple other Canadian, because it's early in camp, and like there's just a couple other teams were looking for me. So I'm like, man, I keep thinking about this dream. I'm like, man, do I really want to keep playing football? Because like when I was preparing for the Bengals, like that was like my childhood dream. Everything was right there for the taking. Like I was going after it. And in that process, like, I kind of fulfilled, even though I ended up not making a team officially, like I played and I played really well, right? Like I knew I could play at that level and I could play well at that level. Like me not making it wasn't because of like my ability. It was something that was outside of my hands. And to an extent, once that process was over and I went to Canada, if I was to be honest with myself, like, yo, I'm up here chasing a paycheck and not really as satisfied with this game that I once was. Like there was a time where I woke up and I was just on fire every day to just go out and smash people, go work out, train, get in the film room, watch myself, watch other great players from the past, and present, and just hone my skills and then be around the guys. Like that process, like I loved that process. Right. But like that process lost its luster. And I'm like, yo, I'm just chasing a paycheck. And to be honest, this Canadian paycheck really ain't that great. It's like, I think it's time to make a shift. And one of the things that I had learned from making that decision to transfer from the University of Pittsburgh to IUP was, in my heart, I knew a year before then that I needed to transfer. But I didn't trust my intuition. There was a girl involved, and then there was some pride in the aspect that like, yo, I just one more year, I'll make it. I'll be able to do it. But the writing was on the wall that I wasn't going to play at Pitt. And I didn't trust my gut. And at this moment in time, that dream was like a message, it was a message from the creator that like, hey, come on, bro, take your talent somewhere else. So I called my offensive line coach and I was like, hey man, I think I'm done playing football. And he was like, well, what are you going to do? What's your plan? And I was like, yo, I'm going to become a pro wrestler. And he goes, fuck yeah. Because he was a big pro wrestling fan. So I was just like, hell yeah. So I got off the phone with him. I called my agent, different agent this time, Al, because I fired Greg's ass. You know what I mean? Greg was a slacker. Let's just say that. So I called Al and I was like, yo, Al, I appreciate everything you've done for me, man. All the help, all the work that you put in, but I think I'm done playing football. And he was like, okay. He was like, happy to help. If there's anything I could do for you, you know, I'm always here. So I was like, all right. I got off the phone. Next call I made was my grandpa. I called my grandpa. I was like, yo, Gramps, you know, I just got cut. I'm broke and I need, you know, that air mattress in the basement would look real nice right about now. So, you know, my Gramps always had my back. So he's like, yeah, no problem. So I flew back home to Erie. I spent about a week in the basement / sulking, you know, depressed, you know, it's kind of like mourning a girlfriend, you know, it's like, yo, I just lost this lover. And even though like you want to lose that relationship, like, you know, it's best for you to move on. Like there's so much, like there's such a bond there that even though it's the right thing to do, it still like tears your heart. That was like what I was like going through. So I was just like, all right. So I'm like in this basement, like depressed / figuring out my future. So I'm like in the basement, I'm like watching wrestling videos / searching the web for wrestling schools. Cause at this point I have no idea how I'm going to become a pro wrestler. I just know that I'm going to be a pro wrestler. So I'm online finding all these like schools. And there was a school like 5 hours from me in Allentown, Pennsylvania, called the Wild Samoans. And they were like these famous old school wrestlers. And so I called them, didn't pick up, called them, didn't pick up, left messages, didn't pick up. I was like, damn. I was like, I can't get a hold of these people. Called a couple other schools, but I found this one school, OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling. And I was like, and it had a good pedigree. It used to be the breeding ground for the WWE back in the day. So I was like, let me call these guys. And they had like this random cell phone number for this guy named Matt. So I call. Matt picks up on the second ring. I was like, yo, man, like, you know, I got this number from this website. You know, I explained who I was, kind of like my background, what I was trying to do. Me and Matt talked for like 45 minutes. Matt was another person that came into my life. He was placed in my life on purpose. Matt is one of the most special human beings I've ever met. I've never met a human being quite like Matt. This dude took the time to like, with a stranger that he didn't know, to like talk, listen to. Eventually, once I went down to school and started training with him, like I was just bugging him every day to like learn from him. Like we only worked 2-3 times a week to practice. The rest of the week was off, but like he was a man, like he was like the head of a gym. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna work out at this gym. And like every morning I'd like get in there early and sit in his office and just bug him, just talk about wrestling. And just all these crazy preposterous ideas that I would have about like what I was going to do and this and that, and like working out and just all this stuff. And he just, you know, he'd sat there, he'd listen, and, you know, he'd give me feedback, and then he'd be honest with me too. And, you know, like a guy like me, like I'm real ambitious and I have these like big dreams. And sometimes I need people that are like, aren't afraid to like hit me in the mouth and be like, yo, this is reality, you know, like hit me with the truth. So, you know, I try to keep those people around me because it's important. And he was one of those people. But so after I got off the phone with him, I was like, great. I'm going to Louisville, Kentucky. And at that time I had like no money and I just had my car. I had no plan. I just knew that it was the June and I had to be there by October. And I needed like $6,000 to pay for school and get down there and all this. So I was like, got to find a real job for the first time in my life. So I was like, cause I'd always made a living off of football and my scholarships and whatnot. So I found like, you know, I found a job for like an assistant sales job for like a car dealership. And I don't know anything about cars, at least at that point in my life. So I just was like, I went up, it was like $400 a week. They're going to pay you $400 a week. You basically just do all the bitch work for the salesman. So I rolled in, I had an interview. I was talking to these managers. Next thing you know, they're like, hey, would you like to be a salesman? And I was like, how much do they pay? And then he was like, well, you could make such and such money. And it was like a pretty nice number. And I was like, I would love to be a salesman. So I just started slinging cars. I worked as many hours as I possibly could. I'd either work out super early in the morning and I'd work super late at night. In that process, I had to learn a whole new style of nutrition because I was no longer training for performance. I was training for aesthetics and performance. So I had my 101 of nutritional knowledge had to go. I had to up the system. So in that process, I went from like 315 down to 255. Now, in hindsight, I would have dropped the weight a lot differently because it was pretty extreme and it was done pretty fast, but I got ripped and I learned a lot in that process. So in that process of working like 70, 80 hours a week, I was like starving myself, eating eggs and broccoli and then chicken and broccoli. Like I was good, basically went keto without even knowing what keto was at the time. And anytime I even sniffed a carb, I'd get the sickest freaking pump ever, bro. It was sick. It was great. And then, so then, I made a bunch of money, went down to Louisville, started training things where I was like, yo, this is great. Within 5 weeks, I got a call from the WWE. This guy, Canyon Seaman, called me and he goes, that's his real name, Canyon Seaman. And he goes, hey man, your information just came across my desk and we've got a tryout going on in about 13 days. We'd love to have you here. And then he proceeded to say, he was like, but if you're not ready or in shape yet, we've got a tryout in 6 months. And before he could finish, I was like, yo, dmatha67gmail.com. I was like, send the info, I'll be there. And then like hung up and like, that was it. And then, so he sent the info and I went down there and like, I was like, yo, because in my mind, this was what I was telling myself. All I need to do is be in front of the right people. All I got to do is be in front of the right people and everything else will take care of itself. I knew that with everything inside of me. So I was like, yo, here it is. Everything I had, all this time I'd put in, all this decision, all this work. I was like, here it is. Let's shine. So I went down to the tryout. It was over 3 days. It was like a bunch of like, basically it was just like a torture chamber, that wasn't even really wrestling. There was like, you went to the WWE Performance Center. There were 7 rings. They basically ran you through, did a drill in each ring, like circuit style for 2 hours. And they just wanted to see who would break. And that was all it was. We didn't wrestle. Nobody wrestled. You did that. And then you would have a lifting session and then you would show your microphone skills. And then for me, the microphone skills was like, when I watched pro wrestling, like, I mean, it was cool to slam people and beat them up and stuff like that. When you're little, I love that. But to me, the coolest thing about pro wrestling was the characters, like the promos, the guys on the microphone, all the crazy shit they would say. Like, to me, that was what I gravitated towards. So I was like, yo, this is really what I came here for. So I had 60 seconds to cut a promo. I had this promo that came to me on like Christmas Day. And I'm like when I was living in Louisville, I forgot to mention this part. For the first couple of days, I was like living in my car. Then I moved into this like commune in the hood. And it was like, I was the only person that crazy enough to live in this commune. So it was just, I had it to myself, but it was like a trap house. Like you could see the outside from the inside of the house. And like, I'm not talking about through the window. I mean like gaps in the wall and stuff. Like I'd have to like duct tape it to keep the wind from coming through. So this is like a wild ass experience. And so I was just like, on Christmas Day, I was there in the trap house all alone, and I had this promo come to me and I just started writing it down. And I didn't know when it was going to come in handy, but it was there. And then, like 2-3 weeks later, that, tryout took place and the promo came in handy. I was like, oh, I've already got something. And I made a couple tweaks in my hotel room and I came in and I cut the promo. And I just like, at the time, if I would go back and look at it, it probably was shit. But at the time, it felt like money. It felt like money. And everybody in the room like lit up. And I was like, after I cut the promo, I like walked out and Canyon came up to me. He's the guy in charge of hiring. And he came up to me, he goes, yo, he's like, we're going to hire you. I was like, hell yeah. And then next thing you know, asked a couple questions, bada bing, bada boom. They were like, all right, you'll report X amount of time. 9 months later, I reported to the WWE Performance Center. And then, the rest was history. I was at the WWE for about 5 years. And then it was, awesome 5 years, crazy 5 years. Got to travel all over the world, perform all over the world, meet a lot of people, develop a lot of skills in the process. And then last March, right when the pandemic hit, I was in a car accident and I got ejected through my front window at like 60 miles an hour. And I then, I like wake up one second I'm driving down the road, like this is a weird intersection. And then the next second I'm like waking up and there's like 3 people over top of me and there's like an ambulance in the distance and there's like chaos all over the place. And then next thing I remember, I'm like in the ambulance and like I'm trying to figure out what happened and like I'm strapped, like my neck, harness, strapped, forehead strapped, everything strapped. I'm just like, hey, like what's going on? And they're like, sir, you were in a car accident. You were ejected through the front window of your car. We think your neck is broken. And that was a pretty scary moment. This dude who's just made a whole life, for himself through his physical body, now is potentially dealing with the fact that it might not be useful anymore. So that was the longest ambulance ride in the history of ambulance rides. So I got to the hospital and, they ran every test possible, poked, prod, you name it, stuck me in a CT scanner, pull me out. I sit there for about like 30 minutes. The doc comes in and he goes, I don't know who you are or where you're from, dude, but there's nothing wrong with you. He was like, you got a gash on the back of your head. There's 5 staples in there. We're going to have to take those out, put about 12 more stitches in there. I'm sure you got a concussion. You got some road burn down the side of your body, but there's no breaks, no cranium bleeding, no fractures, tears, nothing. And that next morning, like 11:30 a.m., I got up out of that bed and I walked out of that hospital. And I went home, and then, that kind of changes your perspective on life in a big way. And it took a while for like it all to hit in or to really sink in. And to be honest, I knew stuff still. I mean, it's been a little over a year since that's happened. And then like every day I'm still kind of gaining a little bit more from that experience. But a week and a half after the accident, the WWE called me and I got released. So they released me, pandemic, car accident. Hey, you're fired. So that caused a major pivot in my life. And through that process, now I've just been, I've kind of had to hustle in a regard, figuring out like, well, what is it that I really want to do with my life? And then it was, listen, I'm a positive, motivational, go-getter type of guy, but I'm human, it was a rough year. I'm not going to act like I was like all sunshines and rainbows. Right. But in that process, I was able to just keep kind of working towards stuff. And I got a bunch of projects on that are starting to come to fruition. And now I'm here talking to you, bro.
It's such a unique story, and at the same time there's these like points that you hear so often. I also came from a place where, I kind of wanted to get out. I kind of, wanted to find my own opportunity. And it's that looking for that ticket out. And I also got obsessed. I also, found myself focusing in on one particular area, and then things started clicking when I broke that obsession, and I started, broadening out and meeting different people. And it's so wild. I mean, when we have that mentality of ticket out, it gives us this tunnel vision to work so hard in one tiny little area. And then you mentioned it when you got to the WWE section of the story where it's like so often it's the person that you know. So often it's like these sort of happenstance things that move us forwards. And I'm just I mean, have you found this an observation as you've worked where it's like there's some places where obsession seems to help and there's some places where obsession seems to hinder. What have you noticed in yourself the rhythm of obsession?
It's a double-edged sword
Yeah.
because, you know, you like, for instance, with, the football aspect, my identity was tied to football. Like, Dan Matha was a football player, not Dan Matha, the human being, not Dan Matha, the lover, the writer, the artist, the friend, Dan Matha, the football player, Dan Matha, the destroyer. That was just one aspect of my life. But my whole identity was wrapped to that. And in that, I was so limited. Now, I didn't realize it at the time. But when I was able to break free from that limiting belief of I'm just a football player, things in my life started to grow exponentially. Like, new people came into my life that helped, kind of permeate through the hardness and the cracks in me and help expand me in aspects that I wouldn't have been able to if I didn't meet them. I was open to trying new opportunities that were outside of myself or outside of my comfort zone. I grew from that, right? I grew from all of these things. And by being open enough to get outside of just being a football player and try these new things, I became a better football player. Like, everything rippled back to me. And it's like Kanye said, when you try hard, you die hard. When you try too hard, man, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter when you try too hard, because what that is that's a scarcity mindset. What I had was a scarcity mindset. I was like, yo, this is my ticket out. This is the only way out. But that's
Yes.
not true. As I've learned, like, that's not true. I was a really good football player, and that at the time was my ticket out, or was one of many pathways. But if I would have poured myself into anything else, I would have came out just as well.
And you broke your rhythm of obsession initially inside of football. You were going for a specific tier, and you you broke that and you said, "Wait, no, I want to get on the field. I want to go play."
Yeah.
And so initially, it was even inside of football, you just changed gears and you became more capable. And man, I see this all the time where it's like I don't know, there's a such a mental magic to it where you know football is a it's a glamorous idea, right? It's so big and it's so glorious, right? When you think about it. And
Gladiatorial.
yeah, yeah. And when you focus on it in on it and you say, "Okay, this is the thing." Uh it's like everything else feels a little bit rusty or muddled or gray in comparison. And
Yeah.
for me, it was the music world. I had big goals in that area, and everything else just felt so small and sad in comparison to my big dream. And I would get tunnel
Expectations.
vision, yeah, on this big glorious thing. And life did not start clicking until I let go of it. And it's it's so strange because you don't hear any motivational speakers telling you to give up on your dreams these days. Like that's
Right.
that's not like the typical phrase. And I don't know that that's what we're doing when we do this type of a thing. But there is a letting go that's happening.
Well, you
And
can't
yeah,
there
go.
so you can't fixate on an outcome. When you fixate on the outcome, you lose everything, the process, right? You don't enjoy the process, and you miss out on a lot of parts of the process that will get you to that outcome you inevitably want. Now, it's a double-edged sword where it's like, okay, I need to have my long-term goal, my medium-term goals, my short-term goals, but your long-term goal can't be static. And it can't be, it's, you go back to the long-term goal just periodically to kind of reinforce it in your brain that this is what we're fighting for, right? But when it becomes obsessive, when it's all you think about, right, it takes away from you getting that goal. And what it is what it really comes down to is control. We think we're in much more control of our lives than we really are. Now, I do believe, I'm a proponent of free will. I think that we do have free will, but I also believe that there are certain things that are going to happen in our life that we have zero control over. And when we fixate on a point, we think that anything that happens that deviates us from that is negative. And we lose the ability to react accordingly, because a lot of times the things that happen, because you're not able to fully judge what happens on the timeline of your life until enough time passes. And a lot of times those negative things that take place, when you have enough time that goes by and you can take a step back and look at it, those things were necessary for you to become the person that you were or are, or who you're going to be. So when we fixate on that point, we don't really give ourselves the ability to adapt, to be flexible. And that was, for me in particular, I became so fixated, I was rigid. And I think that happens to a lot of us that become obsessed.
I really do. And I feel like the act of letting go of a particular point and the obsession, loosening and you being able to see wider, I believe that they're all tied together, that those things are connected. And I wanted to ask you, for me, it's that those have always been some of the most painful points in my life. Because it feels like a bit of a death, an ego death. Was it painful for you, those moments when you said, "Oh, I can't do this thing. Let me look broader." Were those painful moments for you?
Yeah, man. The ego is a motherfucker. Because the thing is every time you think you shave the ego, there's always another layer that you got to keep going through. So like, I think, if we're going to get introspective here,
Please.
For me, some of the obsession with football was more than just my love for football, which I did love football. And I ended up finding that out after I had to make the decision that I transferred from Division I school, right? This prestigious university, right? And had to go to a lesser than university, right? For those who are listening, air quotes, I'm doing air quotes here around these words. And as much as I was obsessed with becoming a pro football player, what I really was chasing was the status of being a football player, the accolades. I wanted to be accepted as somebody of value because I felt like I didn't have value. And I felt like because of where I came from, people didn't respect me. They didn't think that I was capable or able to do these things. So I had this like inferiority complex, I guess, in an extent. So the ego was like, no, I am good enough. I am greater than. I am capable of being this thing. I'm capable of being this great thing, right? This thing that everybody clamors after in our society, right? I mean, football is one of the highest, being a professional football player in the United States is like, next to being, the president or, an actor or a musician, like that's it. So it's like, no, I am great enough. So like for me, it was me trying to prove to the world, air quotes again, But in reality, what I really was trying to do was prove to myself that I was enough. And when I was brave enough to really confront that, it was like, man, it was like, man, I don't need to prove that to anybody. I don't need to prove that. And in that process, I was able to find my love for football, right? I was able to grow as a man, as a human, in a way that I wouldn't have if I wouldn't have confronted that.
I couldn't enjoy music until I let go of that either.
Yeah.
This,
I think I think a lot of us deal with this. A lot of us deal with these like in our head, we have these thoughts that we're not good enough. And for some of us, it makes us obsessive and we just drive, right? We have this insatiable fire inside of us. This wants to burn everything down, and eventually it just burns ourselves down, right? And then other people, it cripples us. Depends on like your temperament, right? And your environment maybe, but it affects everybody differently. But we all deal with it. And the sooner we could come to terms with the fact that like, you don't have to prove nothing to anybody. The only person you got to prove something to is yourself. And that's why it's important that like, whatever it is that you're going to pour yourself into, like you got to love it. You got to love it because you love it. And you got to want to do it because it fulfills you. And you got to figure out what fulfills you. Right? There's a lot of societal pressure on what fulfills us, right? Money, girls, cars, houses. Some of that stuff's nice, but is it fulfilling? Are you making yourself better? Are you making the people around you better? And I think once we start asking, are we happy with who we are when we look at ourselves in the mirror? And I don't know if a lot of people are honest with themselves. They can say that. I know I wasn't. And I think the sooner we can confront that and we start dealing with that trauma, the sooner we can start living a fulfilled life, start finding our true purpose.
this ticket out mentality, like you said, it's so common. It's so common. And yes, I mean, I was obsessive and driven until it crippled me. Yeah, it's so common, and I don't fully understand where it comes from. I know it's tied inside of scarcity mindset, and it's something that's really common with people that are, um, I mean, the easiest demographic to attribute it to is people that, are struggling financially. But anybody that wants that ticket out, it's so common to get this type of viewpoint. And it's so weird, it's so strange that it seems that the moment you let go of that, usually things start to work. Usually the moment you let go of, I have to get good at this one thing in order to get out of my situation, as soon as we let go of that thing, usually we get out of our situation. And it's absurd to me. I think about it a lot because it had a huge effect on my life. I really, really struggled with this. And it's weird how this ticket out thing seems to be a mentality that we apply to statistically improbable things, right? I wanted to be a rock star.
Right.
You wanted to be at the top of the football game.
Right.
It's like, these are, like, statistically speaking, it's a hard no, right? just like with the basic statistics.
Well, it's like when you tell that to your, when your teacher's like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like, hey, I want to be a pro football player. And they're like, that's great, but like, be more realistic.
Yeah. And then we tell ourselves like that, well, this is the only way I could get out of this situation. And we do
Right.
this mental math. And I don't fully know where it comes from because there's nobody telling us, I don't think there's anybody telling us the only way you can have a better life is by becoming a football star. The only way you can have a better life is by becoming a rock star. Like I don't think like people in our life are saying that. Maybe it's a rejection of the people around us where we go, okay, everybody else is not living the life I want. They must be wrong. I need to do this big thing in order to get out of this. I don't fully know where it comes from, but I do know that hanging on to that is can be utterly destructive. And statistically speaking, it has to be more destructive than it's not. Because we always hang on to this ideal of a thing we want to accomplish that's statistically improbable. So that means most of the people that hang on to that idea are not succeeding, right? Like just by
Right.
definition. Um, and then if you let go of it and you're willing to see the broader picture, the opportunities start opening up to you. It's a very strange thing.
Well, I, so it's so if you don't have that mentality though, you could never achieve those things.
True.
Right. So if you
True.
don't have that belief that like I'm going to do what no one else can do, what the 1% of 1% do, like if you don't have that belief in yourself, you'll never achieve it.
And
But then
this is something that I think this might be the wrong word, but I think it perpetuates it in a way because anybody who does achieve this, they tell the exact story that you and I are telling, and they say this is what got me there.
right.
Is I knew that it was my ticket out, and I tried my hardest, and I was obsessive, and it worked, and I won. And it's like a couple people, like 1 in 1 million, one in 3 million,
Right.
1 in 10 million. This works, and then that's the story that we love, even though there's a much more common and I think much deeper and more nuanced story available to us when we can say, hey, my identity is not tied to this thing. I'm going to go through a little ego death here and I'm going to see what I actually could do.
Right. I think some of it too is, there's a bit of societal pressure, no doubt, where you see these rock stars, you see these pro athletes, and they're put on a pedestal, and they're just everyone loves them. Girls love them. Guys want to be like them, or vice versa, depending on the gender that's at the top. And you see that, and you're like, yo, I want that. I want what they have. Right? People respect them. They love them. They admire them. They make a lot of money. Like whatever those things are, they're acknowledged. Right? Acknowledgement is or significance. They're significant or perceived to be significant. And significance is one of the four major categories that people need in their lives. And everyone gravitates to one more than the other. And I know for me in particular, significance is one that is probably it is my dominant one.
Yes, I'm very drawn to it as well.
Yeah, I yearn for significance. So I think that is most likely a factor as well into like people like us that are, want those high status jobs. But I think that what happens is we've got to shift our mind on the significance. Like, you know what I mean? Like, where can you gain significance from? Right? Like, yeah, I could be a football player and people love me for that, but I could gain significance from my peer group. I can be the friend that people can count on, that are reliable, that are always there. I could be the person that they come to when they're going through hard times and just be, an unjudgmental ear for them to listen to. Or when shit hits the fan, I'm there and I have their back, right? Or if I've got a family, for my girlfriend, my wife, my kids, my community, right? Like there's other ways to be significant. I think for people like us, it just comes around a mind shift. We've got to shift our mentality on like where we can gain that significance from. And I think that that's something that's lacking in our society right now. In our society, like we are being programmed to just be like these narcissistic little robots, right? Like everything is me, 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 me. Everything's me. Nothing's we. Nothing's about the community. Nothing's about how you give back. Everything's take, 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 take. What can I do to make the people around me better? What can I do to make my community better? I can gain significance from that. And I don't just do it just to feel better. I mean, obviously I feel better in that process, no doubt. And I like that. And that's what fuels my fire to keep helping. And that's what I've been trying to shift my mindset towards. And I just think if maybe more people start talking about that. It's like, hey man, there's more ways. And if music is your dream, that is your passion, make beats, play the guitar, sing, you know what I mean? Sing, whatever it is, bang those drums, whatever, just do it. But like, and if you do want to be someone that makes music for, and make money off of it, you can do that. And that can be the goal, but like to obsess to the point where it's unhealthy. Right. And that's like the only thing that's in your life. Like you're going to be a very limited musician. And what I find is, I really saw this in pro wrestling. So there's a couple different people that come into in the pro wrestling world. It's very diverse. Like it's like this modern circus, right? You've got your sword swallowers, your fire spitters, right? The bearded ladies, the strong men, right? In terms of niches, not legitimately, but there may be some bearded ladies there, but but you have people that come from all over the world, and usually there's kind of two camps in the pro wrestling world. So there's people that always wanted to be a pro wrestler and never did anything but pro wrestling, and then there's people that came from other endeavors, other areas of entertainment, other athletes. And what I find is the people that end up becoming the most successful, or at least that are the most talented wrestlers. Success in that business it's measured differently by different people. It's because it's subjective. It's art, right? It's entertainment. But the people that I've found that have been the most entertaining, the most successful, have been people that come from different walks of life and have experienced weren't just football players, weren't just wrestlers. They had traveled the world or have crazy, eclectic, hobbies and all these different world experiences that they bring to the table, and it brings their character to life in a way that someone who was only a pro wrestler, they just copy and paste their favorite pro wrestler and they do something that's already been done. Or if you're just like an athlete from a different sport and that's the only thing that you've ever done, you bring like this rigid inexperience to the game, and you can't bring that like art form to life in the way that it needs to be to truly break through to mainstream. And I think, and like I said, the people that have these different experiences, like, okay, I want to be a pro wrestler, but I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to enter a bunch of jujitsu tournaments, or I'm going to be a kickboxer, or I'm going to be an opera singer, or I'm going to be a poet, right? Or I'm going to be a songwriter. All these different things that these people have done, and then they come back to wrestling and they have the wrestling skill set, but now they have all these different experiences, and now they're just like a superstar.
And this is the crazy thing about the obsession mindset. The ticket out mindset is the crazy twist, I feel like, where you can be a rock star. That actually isn't unavailable to you. That is available to you.
Yeah.
You can be the guy that has achieved these crazy things. It has to be done this way. That phrase right there, that's the killer.
Yeah.
And like
you become rigid.
Yes. I mean, like I coach people that are, they have big dreams and goals and desires, right? And like, say somebody that wants to be an actor, they go, okay, I need to go audition for this movie, and I need to, go take acting classes. And I'm like, oh my God, no, please don't. Go make movies.
Right.
You know, go create stories on social media. Because the I'm going to acting school, I'm going to go into this miserable, terrifying room that, has a line of 150 people out the door to go, try out for my shot. This is the lottery ticket out. There's another way out, which is you go be a capable person that tries things and builds a life that's multifaceted and unique. Because so in music, from what I've seen, obsession doesn't create a great musician. Obsession creates a great technician.
Yeah.
And this seems to be a constant in almost every field where somebody goes, I have to do this. This is the way for me. This is the way I'm gonna get success. It's the only way. If I don't do this, I'm lost, and I'm gonna put all of my fear, all of my terror into this thing to make sure that I keep hanging on, because if I don't hang on, I'm a failure and my life is ruined. If you take on that mentality, you have a willingness to spend more hours than somebody else. You have a willingness, like there's a bunch of good things in here, right? You have a willingness to do the drive and have the focus and feel the burn, feel the pain, suffer. You can do all of these things, but you do it from such a tunnel vision mindset that you're just not nuanced. The
Yeah.
end result of who you are lacks nuance. And when you break away from it and you go, weirdly, you kind of give up and you go, okay, well, maybe I won't be able to do this thing. Maybe I won't be able to do this ticket out thing. But I'm going to engage in this space that I enjoy, right? It could be the exact same thing,
Yeah.
I'm going to engage in this space that I enjoy, and I'm going to meet people in this space that I like, and I'm going to work with people, and I'm going to try to be helpful and try to be useful. And then you become multifaceted and you become skilled in some tiny aspect of that arena that is unique and special and important and valued, and that's your real ticket out. I think part of it might be that we underestimate how many useful domains there are to the human experience. And what I mean by that is, like, okay, so you grow up with, not enough opportunity and money, and you go, okay, I need money. And now already, you're limited, right? Because your brain.
You created a scarcity. As soon as you
Yeah.
said I need money,
Yeah.
you created a negative feedback loop.
Yeah, but not even just the money. Your brain's now not thinking, I need networking. I need connections, which is just as powerful as money. It's not thinking, I need, resources that are not money.
Right.
It's highly specific, and it's only one way. And then I think that extrapolates out to how we engage in our activities, where it's like, I don't know, let's take just martial arts, for example. Yes, you could be the top champion in MMA, right? You could shoot for that, and that could be the only thing. But it's like, there's teachers that are rich in every state, that teach mixed martial arts. There's wealthy teachers in every single state who have succeeded, and they have a beautiful life, and they're not like a little bit successful. They're a lot successful. It's like, if you believe your ticket out is to become the top champion in MMA in the world, like, you're not going to think about those opportunities. You're not going to think about, like, oh, well, maybe I could run a gym.
Right.
Maybe I could, maybe I could create a product online that, helps a million other people interested in MMA. And it's the ego plays these tricks with us where it says, oh, that's not the way, and like you're a failure if you did it this way. And like
Blind you.
yes, what one of the big ones in music is, you're not a real musician unless you're making a living in music, right? And that's like such a lie.
Yeah.
It's so unbelievably untrue. It's mind-boggling. And we hold that in our minds as an absolute truth. And it's just completely false. And I think a big part of it, I think it might all tie back to scarcity mindset.
Yeah, I think it does. Because one of the things is that mindset, like you were talking about, I don't have money, I need money, right? And like what you do is you don't say I need money. You say to yourself, how do I get money? Where do I get the money? Right? It's not I need it. I don't need the money. I'm gonna get the money. Where can I get the money? Now you start looking for opportunities all around you. That when you just change that way to look at it, it's like, okay, I don't need money. There is plenty of money in the world. There's an abundance of it. There's an unlimited bag out there for me to get. I just need to look around and find out how to get mine, so that then I can pursue the things that I love. And in that process, you start learning new skills, right? You start flipping, maybe you find a side hustle by buying and flipping cards, right? That's the trendy thing right now. You're flipping cards. Or, you want to get a little bit more obscure. You want to find something that people aren't doing. You find couches, right? You find couches online or on the marketplace, and you buy them for cheap. You tell them you're going to pick them up. You buy them cheap, and you clean them up, you fix them, and then you resell them for $200-300 more than you bought them. But you tell them free delivery. Now people will pay that extra $200-300, right? Or and it's just or you really want to get scrappy. You got the means to do it. You're a scrapper, right? You start scrapping metal. There's plenty of it in people's garbage. You drive around. Like, how bad do you want that money? How bad do you want to be a musician? How bad do you want to be a pro athlete? Is your pride going to get in the way? Or are you going to dig in the garbage and grab that metal? Or are you going to go up to someone who's got like some random trash pile and like, hey, I'll take that trash out of your yard for X amount of money? Okay.
And the ego wants to register it as a failure.
You're digging in the trash.
Yeah, it tells you.
Or you're doing something, you're doing a task that's like considered less than, right?
Yeah.
I'm not as prestigious if I'm doing this. I'm a hustler. I'm doing this. Even though becoming a hustler is, kind of becoming cool again, but right. Gary Vee's leading the charge on the entrepreneurial thing over the past couple of years, but
yes, it's a really important idea that I care a lot about, because it nearly destroyed me. Or you could argue that it did. It's a really hard one that I think
sometimes you got to hit
people
bottom,
don't
dude.
get through. Yeah.
Sometimes you got to get destroyed.
Yeah.
There's no way around. Like, you can't just go up forever. You can't just keep progressing forever. Sometimes you got to get your ass kicked. I mean, some of the best lessons I ever learned was getting my ass kicked in football, getting my ass kicked on the wrestling mat, getting my ass kicked, wherever, on the street, financially, wherever, every time. Why did I, as long as you have the courage to pick yourself back up and be like, why did I just get my ass kicked?
Well, can I ask you about the car accident?
Yeah.
What did you pull from that? Because that is one big ass kicking.
So the car accident was, I think that to me, what I've extrapolated from that is, I was lacking in some areas in my life, and the creator needed to send me a sign. And he had been and I wasn't listening. And he knows how stubborn I am. So he had to hit me over the head with something that would get my attention. And he had to remind me that I'm not invincible. And he had to remind me that I was lacking in for somebody who takes so much pride in taking care of his mind and his body, that I was really lacking in the third sector of the human, like the human being, right? Which is the spiritual sector. And it's different for everybody, right? Whatever your spiritual beliefs are, everybody's different. But you can't deny that the spiritual sector exists. I mean, you can, but I think at some point in everybody's life, a lot of times it ends up being too late or at the end of your life, but it's there. And I feel like it was just it was a wake-up call. When something like that happens, it's a shit test. It finds all of your weak points. Wherever you were lacking, wherever you were slacking, it exposes them. And for me, I was neglecting some relationships in my life. Maybe my ego was getting out of hand at that point. Again, right? That thing's got a mind of its own sometimes. And then just also another reminder that you're like that. It could be over. That happens. That you run that through a simulator a million times. Hell, you run it through a simulator a billion times. There's literally one way that I'm here right now talking to you. Not just, you know what I mean? Like, I've run that thing through my head so many different times, and every scenario does not end up with me alive or not severely mangled. Because there's worse things that could have happened than death in that situation. And even though, on the surface, it's like, damn, dude, you're a superhuman. Like, you just walked away from that, right? On the surface, that'd be real easy for me to be like, yeah, I'm a badass motherfucker. You know what I mean? I've been telling y'all how bad I am, right? But in reality, something larger than me was at work that day. And for me to just glance over that and just chalk it up as like luck would be doing a great disservice. And I think I've been given another obstacle to further progress myself as a human being, to take myself to the next level that I wasn't taking myself. There was some things going on in my life, in particular with work, that I was compartmentalizing. Like, as much as I love wrestling and I love performing at that particular time, I was unhappy with my circumstance. And I was kind of, I was doing something about it, there's some contractual things that were taking place that I was kind of handcuffed with. But at the same time, like, I could have done more. And I didn't. And I think this was like, hey, you don't have time to sit still. You don't have time to wait for anything.
And from what I've seen, it sounds like you have jumped on it, and you have started, broadening out in a bunch of really cool ways. It's like you're doing this, you're doing your podcast, you've gotten into voiceovers. From what I understand, you've been like educating yourself around the crypto world, like all sorts of different directions. Last time we were going to do this podcast, I started with a quote, and I feel like I want to fit it in now, because I think it matches with what's going on, I think, in both of our lives, because we both seem to be diversifying in really interesting ways. So, all right, so this is a quote from one of my favorite science fiction writers, Robert Heinlein, and it's from the book Time Enough for Love, which I think is a fantastic book. I recommend to anybody listening. But yeah, I just want to read this off and ask you, how does this resonate with you at this stage of your life? And from all the experiences that you've gone through. So here goes. A human should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallant. Specialization is for insects.
So, this is the second time I heard that quote, just because the last time we had to get cut because of some audio issues, right? But hearing it again, it just puts a smile on my face hearing that, because like, to me, that's like, I don't know, I feel like that's the essence of life. Like, life is experiences. Like, that's the only way you grow, is through experiences. And if you just keep having the same experience, you don't grow. And by gaining these new experiences and by becoming more proficient in these different areas of your life, you make yourself a more rounded human being. And, right now, everybody's an activist and this, crusader to like, make the world a better place, but nobody is taking the time to make themselves better. And it's the old saying that goes, you want to change the world, change yourself. And to me, when I hear that quote, like, that's what I think of. Like, you want to make the world special, like, make yourself special. You want to make yourself special, you need experiences. You need to fail. You need to look silly. You need to do it again and again and again, over and over, until you start developing all these different skills. Because there's this thing in I had this strength coach, Buddy Morris. He's really world renowned in the strength conditioning world. But this dude, he was like a mad scientist, right? And he just yell shit, right? And like, he'd just yell these, like, a lot of times it'd be like scientific facts or like theories and stuff like that. But somebody was talking about like, oh, why do I need to increase my biceps? Don't really have anything to do with like football or athletics that much, right? It's like, why are you spending any time like training those? And you don't make them a priority. But he would say, if you make one part of the whole strong, you make the whole stronger. And as a human, if you can make any one aspect of yourself better, you make the whole part of yourself better. And I just think you miss out on a lot, because at one point you're going to be 80 years old, hopefully, right? You're going to make it to 80, and death's going to come for you. And when she comes, you can go kicking and screaming and wish you did more. Or you could go with a smile on your face and a thumbs up, sayonara. I fucking did it. I did it when I was here. And I just think about that. To me, when it comes to a major decision, like, do I want to be 70 years old with regret in my eyes, wishing I would have done more? When death comes for me, do I want to go happy with a smile on my face, or do I want to go kicking and screaming? And it just makes it real easy for me. Like, I know how I want to go. I want to go out broke down because of wearing, like, there's another expression here. Let's throw this out. You're either going to feel the pain of rust or wear. You're going to be in pain regardless. Life is suffering. And every religious text says that. And from my experience, that is what life is. But like, what you make of the suffering, how you choose the suffering, now that's on you. That's where your free will comes in. So when you got major decisions to make in your life, to me, that's the thought process.
Dan, this has been an absolute pleasure. Could you just real quickly tell people where you want to send folks online and all of that jazz?
Yeah. Oh, bro. Before I start with that, I just want to say thank you for having me on. Appreciate you. I appreciate talking to you. I've been, before we even linked up, I had found you on TikTok and followed you. I love all your TikToks, bro. They're great. I love what you're doing, dude. So keep doing it. And I really appreciate being able to be a part of this with you. So
absolutely.
So it's really easy to find me, any social media, just Dan Matha. TikTok and Instagram are probably my two biggest social medias. That's where I pump out the most content. That and YouTube as well. YouTube, I put a lot of my podcasts there, and then I'm also going to start bringing quite a bit of like fitness vlogs and workouts are about to start coming that way as well. I have one of the things with the accident was like, like I've been training since I was 10 years old, and like I have a very unique aspect, like I have a very unique outlook on physical preparation, because I've done it in 3 different sports, which have required completely different body types and nutrition. And it's like, I've lived it and I know the actual scientific application. So like, who better than me to like teach people, So I've got a really sick ass fitness, workout program coming out, only for those who are really looking to take their bodies and their minds to the next level. I have a website, danmatha.com, that kind of links you everywhere. I have a link tree as well in all of my bios that links you anywhere. That's really the best way to get a hold of me, is through that link or DM. Just message me. Don't be afraid. I answer my DMs, unless you guys are putting those weird sexual stuff in there. I don't answer those, but anything else, you know what I mean? I'm a pretty chatty Kathy. So, feel free, reach out. I'm just trying to help people as much as I can. That's one of the big things. Like I said, I kind of took away is like, my purpose is one, to excel and be great for myself, but also help others excel and be great for themselves as well. So if you're with that, hit a like, hit a subscribe, find your boy, and let's go on a ride together.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dan.